Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching and for listening, for following and subscribing. I do appreciate you guys very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbott Road in Lackawanna, just minutes from Highmark Stadium. They're on my Mount Rushmore of wings for a reason. They're great. The food as a whole is just underrated. It is a great place. Very supportive of this show, and I hope that you guys who support this show will be supportive of Sunny Reds. You won't be sorry. This is our Friday episode, and I'll tell you what, man, a different one, and I'm looking forward to this. What used to be an every week type thing, because of schedules, life, conflict, we only get to hook up once in a while, but when we do, I very, very much look forward to these episodes. I am joined by old friend, and I say O-L-E, old friend, not old friend. My man, noted hockey, Bleacher Report, Joe Yerdon. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Doing great, Pat. It's nice to be back with you. I know I don't know if it's quiet for you since it's a Bills bye week, but it's nice to catch up because it's the right time to kind of check in and see how things are going. But it's good to talk to you again.
Sabres are on the middle of a West Coast road swing right now. No game as we record this anyway on Thursday night. So yeah, I figured it'd be a great time to throw you a DM and hook up, which is funny. And by the way, for everybody who's watching and for listening, we're going to be talking some Bills. We're obviously going to be talking Buffalo Sabres, a couple other things as well. I feel like, Joe, I need to say that because let me tell you a real quick story here. This is primarily a Bills podcast, because the Bills, they butter the bread. Butter the bread. Is that the right term? Yeah, sure. That's what I'm looking for. Works. I'm not going to be naive here. I know the majority of people like to hear Bills talk. When I stray away from that, and this is not a Bills podcast exclusively. I talk Sabres. I talk other stuff. Most people appreciate that, respect it. Some people, it's not for them, and they kind of turn it off. Then you get those couple people who will comment on YouTube, nobody gives a shit about the Sabres or whatever else. Make sure you put chapters on the YouTube video so that I know when to skip and fly through all that stuff. So I'll tell you what, for those 0.5% people that like to bitch about that, I'm actually doing you a service here. I will put some chapters. If you're only here for Bills talk, I'll put it in where you can fast forward or whatever and listen to that. Just quit that complaining. But anyway, I did reach out to Joe. Usually, I got your phone number as well, but I always, hit you up on DM. Forgot. It's like, your Twitter's still active. So I could have Twittered you a DM there, but I hit you up on the blue sky, man. The skies are blue right now for Joe Yerdon, and not just for Joe Yerdon, for a lot of people, including myself. I've noticed over the last couple weeks, obviously, especially since the election, but there has been an exodus of people going from Twitter and kind of taking up residence at Blue Sky. Some people, it's permanent, and they go to Blue Sky, and they've literally deleted their Twitter. Mm-hmm. Some people are keeping their Twitter, but they're not really using it anymore, but they still want to have it active. And then I think there's some people who are kind of like, let's give this a trial. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to try Blue Sky, and if it don't go well, I still got my Twitter, and they're kind of using both. I feel like that's where I am right now, but you've been on Blue Sky for a while. And before the election too, with you, especially, and a lot of others too. Yeah. But, have you noticed that there are a lot sports media people have really started to gravitate towards Blue Sky? I finally spent a day there. Now I've been using it for a while, kind of just posting my podcast every day. And then I never go back to the next day. I never look at my mentions. I don't interact with anybody, but I've noticed a lot more people going there. And so far it's been a lot of fun so far anyway, but, you've noticed that, right? A lot of your peers now are starting to really gravitate towards Blue Sky.
Well, it's funny because I've been trying to push a lot of the folks in the Sabre media side of
Mm,
things for a while. And I'm talking like going back into last season, like, hey, because everybody's got really sick of Twitter just because it was just everybody's really just it encouraged people to be nasty. Let's put it
it's
that
a
way.
cesspool, dude.
It's bad. I mean, it's always been kind of bad. Let's not act like it was all, rainbows and sunshine for a long time.
Sure.
It was always kind of bad, but then it just took a real bad turn the last, I don't know, last couple of years or so. And it was just like people being really crappy in your mentions just started getting louder and louder. And then even more people were just like, it's like, what? Like, I'm supposed to be here. I'm trying to share stuff with you guys. And like, here's my stories, here's my stuff. Now, mind you, I've I had a bit of a big reason to do it because notedhockey.com is hosted at Substack, and
Yep.
Substack, yeah, there we go, promotion time, baby, $5 a month, $50 for a year. But Substack caught Elon Musk's eye the wrong way, and he was basically shutting down anybody who used Substack and just burying it to the point where, like, if you tried to look up me on Twitter, you wouldn't even find, like, you look up Joe Yerdon and be like, where the hell is he? Did he delete his Twitter? No, it just wouldn't allow you to look for it. So it was a little frustrating business wise, never mind all of his craziness, but
Sure.
like just business wise, it was like, the hell am I even doing here? Like if I post a link to something and like the impressions are none, like if you were following me and I was still showing up in your timeline somehow, like I wasn't getting any action on that. And like just from a business side of things, it was like,
Sure.
this is stupid. Like what the hell am I doing? And I was like, and I'm not going to give a multi-billionaire $8 a month. Like, go to hell, pal. Like, that's just not happening. Like I've invested a lot in other things for my own website and everything else. I'm not giving some dipshit $8 a month just so like a bunch of like the worst people online. Not you, Pat. I know you did it because you're a businessman. You're pushing it. Even though I told you not to do it, but so many people were just like so many of the people that were buying these check marks, I don't even know if there's real people, but they just show up and just say, "Oh, cool," and like, "Great, are you clicking my links? Oh, let me look at the numbers." No, you're friggin' not. So that was a big reason why I was like, well, I gotta find somewhere else. Tried Threads. I'm over on Threads too, but like, Threads stinks. It's
Yeah.
run bad. It's Instagram for words and like, nah, man,
Mm,
no, man, like that wasn't doing it. So I kept trying with Blue Sky, and it was close enough to being like Twitter, where I was like, all right, let's just do this. And wouldn't you know, like the world happens, life happens, all this stuff, and suddenly everybody's like, oh wait, it sucks over here now. I got to find somewhere else to go. And I was like, welcome, my people, come over here. So finally, I was able to break down a lot of folks in the Sabres. Now I'll give Heather Engel a lot of credit. She jumped over very quickly to Blue Sky as well. She was cross posting. I think she still might, doing her work with NHL.com. I think Bill Hoppy was the last one to finally give in and start posting over there. I know we got Lance over there. I don't think Mike Harrington's over there, and I don't think Paul's over there yet. So
that might take a while, dude.
depending on how you feel about those guys, maybe that's a selling point. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I mean, all of us that are doing work on the Sabres, I think there more than 50% of us are there now, including the Sabres themselves. Like the team has a site, has an account over there. They're doing stuff. So, and listen, I get it. Not everybody's hyped up on the Sabres. I understand, but like, if you want to stay informed on them, like you can do that pretty easily at Blue Sky. And
It's the same thing with the Bills, Joe. All the Bills media is parked themselves over there as well. Maybe they haven't bought the car, but they're leasing the car right now.
Yeah.
Over at Blue Sky. I'll say this real quick. And look, this is one of the reasons why I love having you on the show. And if people are listening here at the top, is that you and I get to have conversations about a lot of things. I don't want to do 55 straight minutes of Bills talk 5 days a week or Sabres or anything. Kind of like to mix it up. And this is a topic that has actually intrigued me, especially of late, the Twitter versus Blue Sky. Let me say this, and let me preface this by saying this. I'm a cross poster and I will continue to be. My goal with social media, my primary goal, just like it was before I went to Blue Sky, and it will remain that way, is I want to try to reach as many people as I possibly can. So if there's still people lingering around Twitter, I want to reach them. If there's people who are only on Blue Sky, I want to reach them too. Instagram, wherever the hell it may be, that's always going to be my goal. What I will say about Twitter is, for years. I loved it. It was fun. It was a great chance to, obviously promoting your brand, my brand, stuff like that, but also
Yeah.
just relationship wise. I've had some really good relationships that have been formed because of Twitter. It was a lot of fun. It has not been as fun, nearly as fun over the past couple of years. To your point, which you brought up, I think things really changed with the whole blue check mark. It used to be that was you being verified and you had to go through a process to get verified.
Yep.
I wasn't important enough during the process pre Elon and, you could pay for a blue check mark, basically. Right. I tried to get verified and I couldn't because I didn't work for, a specific organization. It was not easy to be able to do especially for people like myself.
It was very hard to do. Like
it was.
I was in the same boat as you, Pat. I tried to do it too. And they were just like,
yep.
You don't work for anybody, buddy. Like,
So if I saw
2 days at the Athletic, I had a check mark and I was like, oh, okay. Well,
yeah,
I guess that's how it works.
It depends where you worked. And I know I sound like a little crybaby right now, but seriously, that's what it was. But when I saw somebody with a blue check mark, I didn't have to have any suspicions about them. I'm like, well, this person is authentic. They might suck, but at least they're authentically sucking. But then the blue check mark came, and anybody could get a blue check mark, and you can be verified. If you wanted to pay $9 a month, Joe Yerdon could pretend he's Patrick Moran, pay for a blue check mark, and be me. You know what I mean, or vice versa. It's just that part sucked. Even though I do pay for the blue check mark, because to your point, it allows me to do certain things that and I get the whole concept of why you wouldn't want to do that. I get it, but I just decided it was a good value for me, so I did. But anyway, that and the biggest thing is just it is an absolute cesspool. It really is. It is a license for people to be disgusting, nasty, mean, trolling, and try intentionally to hurt your feelings. And some people can deal with it, some people can't. But no matter how you feel about it, it's disgusting. So I see blue sky right now, and this is the one question I want to ask you before we get into some Bills and Sabres stuff here. Blue sky is all pretty colors and rainbows right now for sure. But do you worry as time goes on? Twitter used to kind of be that way, sort of. Is blue sky going to eventually become that place where the pieces of shit start gravitating towards blue sky when they realize, well, shit, man, I can't rattle Joe Yerdon's cage now, or I can't make fun of this girl and piss her off and make her cry because she's not on Twitter or whatever. Now I'm going to have to start going to blue sky. It's like, does this feel like it's the honeymoon period right now with blue sky? And do you worry that eventually, at least to some extent, it ultimately becomes kind of the same? It's kind of what I'm worried about.
It's definitely a honeymoon period right now. It's also like a weird influx period too, because like it had been around for over a year or so with with a small group, a small group of people doing it and whatnot, and but now it's like they're adding over like 1 million people a day at this point, which is crazy. Which they've been doing now for like the last few weeks, and been getting like 1 million new people a day. Which I can tell you, some of those accounts are bots because nobody slides into my DMs apart from you, Pat, to ask me to.
You're the first person I ever DM'd. You're the first. It's not a DM. It's a chat. It's a chat. I chatted you on Blue Sky. Yeah, that's the first time I ever used the feature, and I've never gotten. I've only been on there for a couple weeks. I must have been on some kind of list, Bill's media list or something, because I'm up to like 1,700 followers already, and I was at like 200 a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, there are like the fan packs on there. It's like a pack where it's like, here's all these users. If you're into this, you can follow them if you want to. That's helped enormously because it can be because I'm still tracking down people that for team following purposes or beat purposes. I'm still trying to find them. Hopefully that they're there. If they are, I'm like, boom, followed. Okay, great. But yeah, it's a honeymoon period for now. But I think there's the security safeguards they've got in place there right now is when it comes to muting and blocking and like if you're worried about like posting something and getting dogpiled on, like people quoting it and being like, oh, this idiot, look what they're saying. You can remove that post. Like if somebody's doing that, you can just be like, okay, well, you don't get to show that anymore. I'm removing that from you. Like you can't quote this anymore.
Oh, really?
Like, oh yeah. Yeah. Like,
did not know that.
If you like blocks are really hard blocks, like you block somebody, they are gone. You'll never see them ever, which is pretty impressive, honestly.
Sure.
And if if there are like things that you like things that you don't want to follow, people have put like, packs together to be like, oh, hey, here's, like if you're a Bills, like say you're a Bills fan, I don't want to read anything from any Miami Dolphins person ever. And then be like, oh, here's a Dolphins fan pack. You can be like, oh, subscribe, block all, or mute all, and you'll never see anything from them. Like
Oh, wow.
It's really impressive. And I could see a lot of people just being like, oh, that's crap. Like you should, I mean, there's a lot of people that think like, oh, you should have to read everything. It's like, I really shouldn't have to. I shouldn't need to.
That's my big issue.
That's going to bother me. But it's, I think those kinds of safeguards are good. Like the chats, like they don't put like you're not allowed to send pictures in chats, which is probably a good thing to keep people out of trouble. But there's, like there's things that they're going to add over time, I'm sure. And there's things that are going to change. Like I'm eager to see what happens with like group chats and whatnot on there. I think that'll eventually have to become a thing, but it's in its infancy and it's being run with an honest heart. I want to say, like, that sounds really corny, but it's being run with a, hey, we've taken a lot of notes on all the things that were going wrong at Twitter the last like 10 years. Let's try to make sure that doesn't happen here.
Sure.
So we'll see how it works. I mean, once it starts getting big enough, and it's already getting big. I mean, the number of people, and listen, I'll give a lot of credit to Bills Mafia here, the Bills Mafia as a whole. All it took was like maybe 4 or 5 people to show up there. And then everybody was like, hey, this is way better here. Everybody get in. And then suddenly there's just a massive influx of Bills folks on there, because I've got a ton of people who, I check the profiles of folks who follow me just to see like, oh, is this somebody I know? Whatever.
Right.
But tons of them are like Bills. They say they're Bills fans. I don't see Sabres on it, but they're following me. So like, that's kind of cool. So it, I look at it as something where, it's I don't know, maybe it's very Pollyanna to think this, but like it's starting to be a good thing, and people are in it for trying to not let it turn into what Twitter's become.
Twitter was.
I think that's a good aim to have, because nobody likes getting on the internet and being angry, mad, furious about everything. Just the second you get online, you're just like, oh God, like the meme about like, oh, here I am. I'm turning on the I hate the world machine or something like that. And it's just like, oh God, what horrors am I going to see, unleashed in my face? Now it's just, and it's not to say that like you're just kind of plugging up your ears and saying like, okay, nothing's bad, everything's good. It's more that it's just like, I just want to have fun on the internet.
Listen, dude.
I want to enjoy myself if I'm online. I want to read some good stuff. I want to, crack jokes. I want to see some funny things, see some memes, and just not get screamed at by hateful morons or, fans of some other team that are just total dicks. And like, none of that stuff. Just keep it out of my face. I just want to have a good time. Life stinks. The world's bad. I just want to have a good time. Leave me alone.
I listen, dude, I could not agree with you more. When you're on social media, some people more than others, some people because they're kind of working and playing. I think that's what you and I do. We work and we play on social media. Some people just want to play, but yeah, having a good time. It's like going to a bar and having a good time, as opposed to going to a bar where you're going to see fights all the time and you're, on the edge of your seat waiting, like what bullshit is going to happen at the bar next. Who wants that shit? Nobody does. And I'll tell you, with Twitter, it's kind of like I got too far in, like followed too many people. And I've been trying really hard recently to mute a lot of people, a lot of keywords, a lot of things. And then I'm here to tell you, it don't work. It does not work on Twitter. I can promise you that. I have unfollowed a lot of people, a lot of terms, just because I am a hothead, and you know this. Yes. I can't be the bigger person. I don't turn the other cheek. I waste so much of my day, my time, my energy fighting with people that I really shouldn't. And I'm kind of like stuck in that cesspool, like I said on Twitter. With Blue Sky, to me, it's almost like a second chance. And now I'm going to be following a lot less people. I'm going on there for news and for some entertainment. And it's going to be as peachy as humanly possible for me. I'm going to mute and block or do whatever and limit my going back and forth with people, whether they agree with me, especially if they disagree me, or just the way they talk about it.
Mhm.
I don't know, man. I mean, we could do an entire episode just on this stuff as you move on. But yeah, I'm getting there. You're parked there. You're a resident there. I rented some space, but now I'm starting to like think maybe I should move my shit in there
You're
and just
you're leasing and looking to maybe own at this point?
exactly. It's exactly what I'm doing. Like I said, I'm definitely going to keep my Twitter. And then even people who are listening to this, if they haven't tuned out already, there'll be at least a couple who are going to, talk shit about
Right.
Blue Sky and that it's for
Right.
sissies and, hardcore, whatever.
The woke mob, blah, blah.
Yeah. Why even get into it? Why even bother? All right. Real quick, too. UB football, dude. I got to bring this up real quick. I had him on the show last week, Shaun Dolac. We did a show at Imperial, and I love that kid. I have raved about him. I've seen him play since he was in Little Loop. His older brother is actually even better than he was when they were kids and whatever. But he's a hardworking kid, a good kid, and he's played 2 games now since he was on at Imperial. They won both games. UB is they were bowl eligible after last week. After this week, they're definitely going to a bowl game. And Shaun Dolac is a name now that's starting to spread around circles, not just locally, but nationally. Wednesday night, he had 9 tackles. He had a sack. He had 2 interceptions and a pick 6 where he did a little bit of hurdling. Looked pretty good moving around for a linebacker. A lot of people don't know that the kid was actually a running back in high school who ran for almost 2,000 yards at West Seneca East. But still, this kid is going to probably be an All-American. And everything I've heard is that he's a legitimate draft prospect. But you're missing the boat here, folks, in Buffalo. I know this is a pro sports town. It always will be. You're going to be following the Bills and Sabres before anything else. I get that. But when somebody like Shaun Dolac goes into a program like UB and does what he's doing, I really wish more people would take notice. Special kid, man. Special player, Joe.
He's it's easy to always forget about UB football just because, Bills obviously, and, UB, I think what was the last time UB football was good was when Khalil Mack was playing for him, I think. Roughly.
Yeah,
maybe
pretty much. They've been competitive since then, but yeah, that's the last time they were
Yeah.
good.
The running back kid that they had,
Patterson.
Patterson. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was awesome. He was incredible.
Yeah.
But it's, it's kind of how it goes with college sports where it's like hot and cold, especially at that level, like MAC level. You get down to where it's like you're hot for a couple of years because you get a few good players, and then you cool off, they graduate, they go pro, whatever. And then, you just kind of ride the waves of it. And this is definitely an up period for UB. And it's cool when they're good because, like, they're the local fun team. Like, well, they should be the local fun team anyways. It's just, it's tough to make your way in the MAC, but I gotta say, like, reading up on them and finding out like some of the stuff they did, like the coach that they brought in, I gotta say, really nice job there. Cause what's his name? Pete Lembo.
Yep.
Man, like, nice call there because that's a guy that's been around. He's been doing stuff for a while, and like making it work, making it happen. So, like, good job there by taking care of that and getting somebody who's, I don't know, making a difference for once. It's so easy to just kind of like go through the machine, find some dude. And it's like, oh, he's a football lifer. And it's like, gets in. And it's like, oh, it's Chan Gailey, but for college football. Oh, this stinks. But, this is it's a nice term because, man, watch some of the highlights and like some of the scores you see from them. They're fun. They do a lot of fun stuff.
It's fun. Like we talked for a couple minutes before we started rolling the camera here. Like Mina Kimes is talking about him. I saw him on Barstool Sports that their college football podcast show featured his pick 6 from yesterday. I'll tell you, dude, for the season, he's got 146 tackles, 4 sacks, and 5 interceptions. He's a linebacker, 5 interceptions. It's crazy. And having him on the show, and this is where I truly believe, Joe, I don't sound, you and I are kind of exchanging like, oh, this might be cheesy, but it's true. Well, here's my turn. It might be cheesy, but it's true. Fate, because he hurt his ankle last year. He missed most of the season, went on IR, and he transferred. He actually went into the portal and he went to Utah State, and they happened to switch coaches, and he went to Utah State because in part it was an opportunity for him to play against better competition. Like they were playing Pac-10 schools out there. USC was on the schedule, a couple other ones. So it was going to have more games where NFL scouts' eyes are on them.
Mm-hmm.
And just again, as fate had it, the coach left, didn't feel like it was a fit. He was missing being back home, and the ball got rolling to come back to UB. He comes back to UB, and he's one of the best linebackers in the country. And he's helped this team win 7 games, and now they're going to a bowl game. And that's just all fate, because just as easily he went to Utah State, he could have stayed there. And I'm sure he would have balled out no matter where he went. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it was just, it's good for him. And now he's in a great place. And this program is in a much better place because of him. It's just really, really cool to see. Before we take a break, let's get into a little bit of Bills stuff here. They're 9-2. We have not talked. Last time I had you on the show, actually, you were with me at Imperial Pizza, and that was in August. So that was before the season started. We're 11 weeks in here for the Bills at the bye, coming to the end of this bye week here, and they are 9-2. They just beat the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday, an incredible game, the highest rated CBS non-Thanksgiving or non-Christmas game in 17 years or something like that, since Brady versus Manning back in 2007. Anyway, I feel like I always got to say this when Joe's on the show. Joe's not Bills Mafia. He's not a Bills fan. Joe is what we like to call a Bills watcher. But you are watching the Bills. I know you cover the Sabres. We'll talk Sabres in a few here. But you watch the Bills. What do you think right now? How surprised are you that the Bills are 9-2 and that I could be wearing an AFC East divisional champion t-shirt right now for 2024, and I'd feel safe and I wouldn't worry about it being on, freezing cold takes in a month because they're winning that division. They're 9-2. What are your thoughts? How surprised are you?
First off, I want to take a victory lap because I remember telling you at Imperial Pizza, the Bills are winning the division.
You did say that.
Everybody was kind of like, wow, they're taking a step back. And I was like, listen, they could take 4 steps back and still win the division because everybody's a bonehead in the division. And you were like, well, they're in Miami, Miami's got some guys. And I'm like, it's like Miami showed their ass last year. We know what they're about. And, the Jets, like Roger, like whatever. I'm not a football genius by any stretch. Like my favorite team's the Detroit Lions. Yeah, it looks great now, but for the 30 years before this, total idiot, complete idiot for being like, I like this team. Complete moron. But I had this division nailed down. The Jets, I was I don't believe him. Rodgers is a bum. He's a crazy person. Now, mind you, that's a lot of blind dislike going on there from his years with the Packers. He stinks. I was like, New England's bad. They stink. And I was like, the Dolphins, phony, completely phony. And I said, if the Bills don't win the division, fire everybody because there's no reason. There's no reason for them to not win the division. And people were like, well, I can't believe they're going to win it before, people were like, maybe they'll win it before the bye week. And I was like, well, that would be crazy. Maybe they could. I don't know. But the fact that it was like close enough that it's like, I don't know, the right combo, like wins and losses, can't they do it like after like next week or 2 weeks?
I think it's after next week. I think 2 weeks is when they could have, as early as they can officially clinch the division. They've clinched it already for all intents and purposes. But This race is over. Throw away the division though. Just pretend there's just one big conference.
Right.
The Bills are 9-2.
Mm-hmm.
How surprised are you that they're 9-2? Like, winning the division, you could be 6-5 after 11 games and still be winning the AFC East right now. That wouldn't be nearly that impressive, but they're 9-2 and they're the one team, which we've seen the last 3 years before this. So it shouldn't be that surprising to beat the Chiefs. Yeah. But hey, they beat the Chiefs, new leadership, new core, a lot of guys gone, a lot to prove. It wasn't a make or break game, but I think it was a validation game. What's the Chiefs game a validation game for you? You had to go out, you got to beat a really good team because the Bills really weren't beating many teams. They can only play who's on the schedule, but to beat the Chiefs, is that a validation game to you?
It is to a point, hearing Bills fans just being like, I hate that, Kansas City gets to 9-0. Everybody's like, they're the fakest 9-0 team ever. They should be like 5-4. And it's like, I don't disagree. Like, I don't disagree with that at all. Like, they've been very, hey, you got to have some luck. And they've had a lot of luck. But like, you beat them and make them 9-1. It's like, oh, see, we're great. And I'm like, you were just telling me this team isn't good. So like, is it a good win or is it not? It's a great win. But like, because that's who you're facing in the AFC title game, provided you take care of business. Like that's, on paper, that's what the AFC championship should be. Like that's flat out should be Kansas City and Buffalo. I'm not buying on anybody else in the AFC. I know there's some teams that are like up and down, like Houston. I can't figure them out to save my life. Like they should be better than what they are, but then, they come out and they kick some teams in the teeth, look really good. And then they look like garbage other times. And it's like, all right, same for Baltimore. Pittsburgh, I can't buy on Pittsburgh to save my life. Like that to me screams as a phony, 8-2 are they? The 8-2 team?
Yeah, they're 8-2. They're actually playing, as we're recording this, they're playing Cleveland on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah. So like, the class of the AFC is Kansas City and it's Buffalo right now. Houston's like right on the outside of that. But like I said, I don't know, like they can be good, but then there's games where, they're going to get their teeth kicked in by not the Jaguars, but like just by somebody else where it's like, what the hell are they losing to those guys for? Like, that's crazy. And like Cincinnati should be better. They're not. Burrow probably needs like a whole nother year to come back from what happened to him last year. But no, Buffalo. Does Buffalo have some issues? Yes. They can't stop the run. They're very bad run defense unless they, they've been very fortunate that some teams have decided to stop running the ball in the second half against them. Like,
yeah, that's happened a couple times. Sure. Yeah.
Some teams figure like, oh, well, they know we're going to run it now. Let's throw it on them. And then no, Bill's strength is that secondary is the linebackers in the secondary. Like they've been really good there. And I know it's like kind of like a sort of no-name secondary, but all those dudes are playing way up and they're playing hard, which again, gonna pat myself on the back and say the last thing I ever worry about with the Bills is how McDermott coaches up the defense. Now, again, like they've got issues, but I said they can take care of business because at the very least, whatever other problems they might run into, the defense has got to at least play very hard. I'm not gonna say they're gonna be great. They've been good enough, and they held it down against Kansas City. They did really good there. They were able to get in the backfield, make Mahomes try to run around and figure stuff out. But you can make him run around and then he can make plays, but like he wasn't able to make plays because they had the coverage right in the secondary. So like they did what they had to do in those games. Like the games that they've lost, it's been like, all right, that's, like Baltimore blitzed the garbage out of them and like they didn't know how to handle it. Like, okay. And what was the other? The other game was Houston, wasn't it?
Houston, yeah. Houston, a lot of injuries that game too. Yeah. But I'm not to make excuses for the Bills because Josh Allen was lousy that game. But there was no Khalil Shakir that game. There were no Teron Johnson. I don't think Bernard didn't play either. They were missing a lot. I mean, again, not to make excuses. They lost 2 in a row, which kind of was though, Joe, the why they needed to beat the Chiefs to me to get some of that validation because they played 2 good teams and they lost to 2 good teams and they hadn't really beaten anybody before the Chiefs game. Let me do this. Let me take a real quick break. I'm up here against the break. Come back on the other side. I got a couple more Bills things and we'll get to the Sabres as well. I got a Josh Allen specific question that I wanted to ask you and maybe it's a little bit different for a hockey guy. We'll find out right after the break. All right, I am back here with Joe Yerdon. If you haven't done so already, go to notedhockey.com, man. $5 a month, $50 a year, whichever way you want to do it. Support local journalism. Joe does a great job of covering the Buffalo Sabres on a day-to-day basis. Of course, you can also find a lot of his work over at the Bleacher Report as well. That said, we're talking Bills right now, not Sabres. We'll get there in a minute. Yeah, look. When it comes to Josh Allen, I look back to last year. All right. Now, Josh Allen's statistics were significantly better than Lamar Jackson, way better. And Lamar Jackson won MVP by a lot. And it kind of rubbed some people the wrong way. None so more than Bills Mafia, of course.
Right.
Fast forward to this year. Lamar Jackson statistically is crushing it I mean, his stats are way better than Josh Allen's, but Josh Allen is 9-2 and he's played great. He just, the stats aren't like blowing you out of the water anywhere. And Josh Allen is the front runner 11 weeks into the season now, which is not early anymore. He's like the Vegas betting favorite too. So that's not just a Bills Mafia thing here. That's Vegas saying Josh Allen is the front runner for MVP. So Lamar has shittier stats last year, wins MVP. This year, Josh has shittier stats compared to Lamar, who's crushing it with stats. But it seems like Josh is definitely on line to win MVP. Obviously, winning's got a lot to do with that. The Bills are 9-2. The Ravens have 4 losses, including 2 shitty home losses that they should have never had. I don't know if I could compare that to hockey, but it would kind of be like, just to keep it simple, because I know a lot of Bills fans might be casual Sabres fans and they don't really follow the league, but that would be like, say, like maybe Tage Thompson, leads the team in scoring by a lot, but you want to make the case that Tuck is a bad example, I guess. I don't know, but Tuck is really the MVP, even though it doesn't have as many points as Tage. I guess that's that's a terrible comparison because they're on the same goddamn team. There's no way to do it when you try to use guys from the same team. So let me kind of rephrase that, Joe. Josh Allen, is he MVP worthy to you right now, even if statistically he's not matching, say, what Lamar Jackson is doing?
I would say yes. That the NFL MVP thing is always such a weird race to me. I mean, it helped that for a lot of years it was just kind of like a toss up between Brady and Manning and Aaron Rodgers. Like it was always those 3 guys, and it was like, well, which one of these 3 guys is gonna end up winning it, and that's how it would go. I think now we're in a space where like the expectation levels for different quarterbacks skews that race. I think, which I think in Lamar's case, it's like, well, we already know he's an MVP level guy. It's like, what else can he do to prove it? Now, if the Ravens had a better record, maybe it's a different discussion because it's kind of like, well, to work in your hockey comparison here, I'm going to use the Coach of the Year award for that.
Okay.
Like Coach of the Year, like it's a weird thing because it always seems to the guy who ends up winning it is the guy who had the best goalie. And once that goalie cools off, that coach is out of a job. Like, like later, like what was it? I saw it was like 2 years ago, the 3 finalists for like the Coach of the Year for the NHL are each got fired since that 2 years ago. One of them was Lindy Ruff. Of course, he got rehired. And one was Jim Montgomery, who just got fired by the Bruins. And then I forget who the hell the third guy was, but like that guy also got fired. So it's like, well, how does that end up working for NFL? It's like a guy wins it and it's like, okay, if he doesn't exponentially do better the following season, and like Lamar's doing that stat wise, but like the Ravens record is just and there's been enough games where it's just like he hasn't gone out and balled out to win those games for him. Like he did that a lot last year. That's where Allen's kind of doing it for Buffalo, where like the numbers kind of stink. You can not stink, like they're not as good as they
by his standards compared to his other last 4 seasons. He's on pace statistically to have the lowest passing yards, the lowest touchdowns he's had of his entire career as a full-time starter. To your point, though, Lamar's lost at home to the Browns and the Vegas Raiders at home this year.
Right. And you can see the 2 losses that like Buffalo's had and just be like, okay, like, all right, you lost to one team that's going to be in the playoff. Well, probably 2 playoff teams. And it's like, Allen doesn't play very good in one of those games. I forget about the Ravens game. He had like 0.3 seconds to even get a pass.
There's nothing you can do.
That was a mess. That game was a disaster.
But yes, he stunk in Houston. But yeah, Baltimore was just a 1 through 53 roster ass whooping period.
Yeah. So like, I think it's some of the games that the Bills won, certainly the Kansas City game, he ices it with the touchdown run at the end. It's having those kinds of plays to like either ice a game or to put your team ahead or something like that. Something that goes on the reel where it's like, wow, holy crap, that guy. Now, here's where I'll be a bit of a homer. I don't hear Jared Goff's name for MVP at all. And I'm like, what's he got to do? Like what? Like Detroit's 9-2. They're 9-2. So it's like
They only got one
Okay,
loss.
but yet, the Houston game was also bad for him, where he throws 5 interceptions. And I don't think
Yeah.
Houston punished him for any of those interceptions. Somehow, some way, it didn't turn into the Peterman redux with Jared Goff, because none of those were run back for touchdowns. Houston didn't score off any of them, and the Lions ended up winning the game anyways. So, they go out and they put 50, they drop 50 on Jacksonville, and Goff throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, and it's like, what's the dude got to do? And I get it. If you're just running up scores and not running it up, it's just some of these teams are just friggin' awful. And Detroit goofs around later on in some of these games. Goff stats are pretty good. I haven't looked at it close enough to do a microscopic analysis of any of this stuff, but
I sort of have.
I just see teams with the big records. Yeah. You immediately go to the quarterback and say, okay, is that guy an MVP? All right, let's see what's up. Somehow, Mahomes is not even being talked about for that at all. And they've lost, the one game. But he's not getting talked about at all because he doesn't put up the monster stats. He hasn't done any of the crazy goods now. And he's had some of those games where he's done something goofy and won. So it's so weird. And a lot of it really is just media and fan driven. You mentioned, the odds are in Allen's favor. And I'm like, yeah, because everybody in Buffalo is dropping $5 on him to win. They're skewing the odds.
Well, look, with Lamar, again, I'll just say this. The 2 home losses to crappy opponents have hurt him. Plus, he has not played his best against the best teams. And also having Henry on his team is, I think, held against him. You mentioned the highlight reel plays that you got to have those. And Josh Allen, that's going to be that run on Sunday is going to lead off the highlight reel with him. And the last thing with Jared Goff, Joe from Queens was on with me. He does the post-game shows with me every week when we do our live shows after a Bills game. And he brought him up. And I'm like, yeah, they got 2 great running backs. He doesn't even really throw the ball much. And then I looked up the stat line from that game against Jacksonville. And I'm like, in real time, I'm like, holy shit. He threw for 412 yards and 4 touchdowns against Jacksonville. And to date, I'm looking at it right now as I'm talking to you. He's on pace for a little over 4,200 yards passing and 34 touchdowns for the season. Now, the problem is he's on pace for 15 picks, but that's because, again, he had one bad game and he threw 5. I just think the fact that they run the ball so much might be held against him. And one last thing before we get into Sabres talk here. It's funny because, again, you've been coming on this show now for a long time. When I lived in Florida a couple of years ago, you were on the show literally every week. And what I remember most about that are 2 things. The Sabres sucked, and I absolutely hated them. Hated them. I'm still not too fond of them right now either, but at least they're tolerable to me right now. Anyway, that and the Detroit Lions was your team. They sucked really, really bad a couple of years ago. And if I would have mentioned, a Bills-Lions game, it would be more fun for me probably than you. If we went back before that, if I had this podcast pre-Josh Allen, both of our teams sucked, and it would have been a pity bowl or a who's going to get a better draft pick bowl trying to lose that game. But yet here we are in the year 2024, and as great as that Bills-Chiefs game was, as hyped as that game was, we are a little less than 3 weeks away now from Buffalo Bills, Detroit Lions. That could be quite literally, and I'm no hyperbole here, none of that. That might be the NFL game of the year right now. Bills Lions in a couple weeks, man. That's going to be fun.
I wonder the thought I've had about that game, because it's unavoidable for people to be like, "Whoa, can't wait for that." All right, just relax, please. Just everybody chill. But are the Bills going to have anything to play for? I mean, they're going to have home field to play for, obviously. Oh, yeah. The division's going to be wrapped up. So it's all right. But that's a prove yourself. Detroit's going to have stuff to play for the rest of the season because they got Minnesota. And Minnesota's right there. And, I haven't even looked at the rest of the NFC to know who else might be good. Because I know the West Division is ass because the Cardinals are somehow leading the NFC West, which is beyond me. But
Detroit's 9-1, Philly's 8-2, so the number 1 seed overall for home field for the playoffs and a bye. that's going to be in play. I also think that's going to be in play for the Bills too, especially if they're beating the Chiefs. If they keep pace, the Bills are a game behind the Chiefs, but they beat them. The Detroit's they're the only one-loss team now in the NFL, or actually the Chiefs. So I'm sorry. They're the only NFC team with one loss right now. So yeah, I think having something to play for is going to be a factor for both teams.
Yeah.
It's going to make the game even better.
It does. I mean, I was about to say, like, I don't know, maybe some of these, either one of these teams keep something in the bag in case they might need it for a really big game at the end of the season. But I'm like, no, Detroit doesn't keep anything in the bag. They just do what the hell they wanted to.
December 15th.
Whatever pops in his head, and he's like, you know what, this would be fun. Let's go do that. And then they just go friggin' do it. Now, we didn't get a chance to the Cowboys game. I enjoyed them beating. I mean, everybody enjoys beating the hell out of the Cowboys.
Sure.
But I enjoyed how spiteful the Lions were in that game based on what happened in last year's, NFL robbery, based on the idiot referees not recognizing that when two linemen came over to tell them, like, hey, I'm eligible. They go, duh, I don't know what you mean. That they're beating the crap out of the Cowboys in Dallas, and then they brought in the same lineman who called as eligible last year. They had the 2-pointer and thought they won the game, and the refs were like, legal, like whatever, bullshit. They took him and split him out wide at wide receiver in the fourth quarter, up by 30 points, just to be like, yeah, no, he's our receiver for these next few plays. Go eat shit. And I was like, you know what? That's how I would coach a team too. Like, oh, these guys thought they were all cool beating us last year because of some bogus garbage. Well, guess what? We're up by 30 in your building, and we're just gonna, oh, hey, number 70, get out wide.
I would say, if you're not if you're not a Bills fan, like if you don't follow the Bills every week, or you don't follow the Lions every week, and your team is the Browns, the Chargers, whoever it may be, if your team ain't going to the Super Bowl, I think by and large, the nation, the world would love to see a Bills Lions Super Bowl. That would be the ultimate. It really would. And
for
not
everybody else, for us, a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Like, that's, I mean, yeah, it would be cool because, oh, somebody's going to win their first one. Yeah, that's nice. Somebody's not going to win one, though. And that's the bad part of it. Because,
the Bills are used to that. They've done that 4 times during the Super Bowl era. Just the game itself, though, dude. This is not, I mean, a little bit of exaggeration, but not really. It's Ali Frazier in terms of just excitement of the way these teams move the ball, the way they can beat you with the run, with the throw, and Josh Allen can run the ball. Goff can throw the ball. Montgomery and Gibbs run it all over the place. They're just weapons galore. There's star players. Even without Hutchinson, there's still star players galore on the defensive side with both teams. It just would be, it's the Super Bowl that the world needs, man. The world, except for Joe and maybe me, need to see.
What is it? Anytime I've caught some of the Bills Mafia, Kristen Kimmick's one where she's like, we need Bills Lions Super Bowl. And I'm like, no, we don't. Because for me, like, the perfect Super Bowl is you have a team you want to root for and then a team you want to root against. And that's a game where, like, no, you want both teams to win because it's cool. Because, like, the Bills, you got all the fans, you got the history, and it's like, finally, like, yeah, they can win one. And then the Lions, it's like, they've been dog crap for 70 years. Like, yeah, be nice. It'd be cool. Get one for the dumbasses that were awful for centuries. Like, just be cool. But, like, when they're facing each other, it's like, oh no, one of these teams got to lose. I hate that. Give me a game where it's like Bills against, like, the Eagles, or Bills against, I don't know, I don't even freaking know, the Vikings. Well, Vikings would be the same story because then it's like, oh, somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose another one. And then
eight Super Bowl losses, 4 each between those two teams.
That would be the ultimate, because then somebody's going to be 0-5. That's that's even worse than Bills. It's like, if the Lions lose that, then it's like, well, they made it to their first one, they lost. Them's the breaks.
Well,
Bills Vikings Super Bowl. Jesus, man.
well,
Like you're everybody, the losing teams fans have to go to counseling after.
well, look at least I'm talking about the possibility of a Buffalo Bills championship game. Sabres, I ain't ready to even like envision that. I'll say this though, all right? So the Sabres are 9-1 as we record this right now after 19 games. Technically, as we record this, I think they're the second wild card team, but that could, by the time they take the ice on Friday night, that might probably not be the case. But anyway, regardless, let's throw aside the wild card current spot for 1 second here. Again, 9-1 after 19. They started the season 0-3. It's like, here we go again. They were 1-4-1, and I went on a couple tirades after 6 games. It looked like they were toast already. I'm like, here we go again, yet again. They're 9-6-1 since that start, though, to the first 3 games of the season. And they're 5-2 right now in their last 7. And they've been a team of streaks, quite literally. I mean,
Yes.
they had a 3-game winning streak, then they had a 3-game losing streak, then they had another 3-game winning streak. Now it's win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1 of late. They've had 3 chances. They're 500 now. They've been 500, and they've had 3 different chances to get over 500, and they've lost each of those. You covered his team. Again, Bill stuff, you gotta watch him more from the outside. You're in the trenches right now covering this team on a day-to-day basis. What's your evaluation? We are now at pretty much the quarter point of the season, and this is a team that's not out of it by any means.
Oh, no.
They're not out of it. This is a jumbled, parity-filled Eastern Conference, it feels like, this season. Where are you at with this team right now about a quarter of the way through? And we'll talk about a couple players as well.
I think what they are right now is I think this is what they are. I think they're a perfectly middle of the road team. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're bad. And I know every loss gets taken like, gee, these guys doing it again. They stink. They're bad, blah, blah, blah. There's flaws. There are some more obvious flaws, but like some of the flaws that we saw earlier in the year have gotten way better. The power play, like the power play was what, 0 for the first 27, 28, something like that, and looked awful, like just abysmal. But they, it's a power play that was learning a whole new system, whole new way of doing things. Assistant coach Seth Appert has a whole different idea of like what he wanted to do. And that takes a lot to make guys learn something new, unlearn the old bad habits, learn new, ideally better habits. And that goes for everything. Like Lindy Ruff's is still working on undoing a lot of damage from the last few years. And that's not to say that like Don Granato was a bad coach. It ended badly because didn't take care of his own house.
Yeah.
But they learned a lot of good things, but a lot of the bad habits and bad, some of the bad, I don't know if it's like habits or just bad routines or whatever. A lot of that just kind of sticks around after a while. And Lindy's doing a lot to try to like shake that out of them and be like, all right, we're not doing that stuff anymore. That stops now. And that's why you ended up seeing Matthias Samuelsson and Henry Jokiharju get sat down for, games. And that was because like, hey, and Lindy even said it at the time. He goes, I'm being as patient as I've ever been. And boy, we got some action out here tonight. That's part of like just saying like, we got to stop doing a lot of these old things. Cause Lindy watched enough tape of last season and saw him to his face. Like when he coached the Devils, he saw a lot of what was going on and was like, man, there's a lot of stuff here that like, this ain't going to fly here. So it's a matter of just like,
is that the hot take alarm going off on the West
is.
Side?
It's killing me right now.
I love it.
But like they had to kind of fumigate the room of all like the old bad habits and just kind of like just being like, well, I can do this because I always did and I won't get yelled at about it. And then Lindy's like, hey, quit screwing up. You're screwing off. And like, that's enough. Like that stuff's got to stop now. So that takes a bit. And like they had a weird training camp. They had to go, they got speed run through like the first few games here in Buffalo, then went to Europe for 2 weeks. Like that, this was maybe the worst season to have a team go to Europe with a new coach, learning all sorts of new stuff, trying
Lots
to
of new
figure out
players.
what you're doing. Like, yeah, it's just so much stuff that they had to get worked on. So yeah, so they started off slow. It wasn't that big of a surprise, to be honest. But like they're in a good place now because they're keeping pace with everybody. The teams in front of them in the division, like Toronto, Florida, Tampa, like Tampa's getting better. Florida's really good. Toronto's somehow just doing well despite having a lot of their own problems. So like that, but that's talent speaking for itself there. But everybody else they're kind of in the mud with. I don't know if you looked at the entire Eastern Conference setup right now, but Buffalo's in the second wild card as we speak right now on Thursday night. They're 6 points back of the first wild card, which the Rangers have, because the Metropolitan Division is a friggin' gauntlet. Like that's an evil division right now. But the Sabres are also 3 points up on dead last in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Because Montreal and Detroit, who have been horrendous and who they've lost to both of those teams, they're 3 points back. Like, and everybody's like, they're going to fire the coach in Detroit. Montreal's just like, I don't know. We do have to like move Marty St. Louis out. Like, what the hell's going on here? And here are the Sabres just like 3 points up on them, but in a playoff spot. So cool. We got it.
It's so wild, dude. You know what's funny is I had an episode a handful of weeks ago, whenever Kevin Adams turned 50. I know that was recently. And I looked at the tweet, and sometimes Sabres social media, I like them. I know they work hard and I don't envy them at times, but they put out a happy 50th birthday tweet to Kevin Adams. And I said, I'm going to get me a nice ham sandwich here and a soda, and I'm going to sit at my desk. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to spend some time reading the mentions on Twitter. Talked about the cesspool. Anyway,
yeah,
the mentions were so outlandish that I decided to quite literally make an entire episode of just reading. I called it Mean Tweets. All these negative things said about Kevin Adams on his 50th birthday. And I get it. And he has made mistakes. And I still think this team definitely needs a top 6 forward. How you get one, that's easier said than done. But what I will give Kevin Adams what I will give him some credit for, 19 games in, is a lot of these new additions are playing pretty goddamn well. Ryan McLeod has been really good. He's got 6 goals already this year. Jason Zucker, I don't know why I didn't like that signing. I don't have a good reason to. I just didn't. It's been a good signing. He's got 4 goals, got 13 points. Pretty good on the power play. That fourth line guy, those guys, Malastein's been good. Lafferty playing with Krebs until the injuries kind of forced some things to be moved around. Looks like a pretty solid fourth line. Again, there's holes on this roster, and you could certainly be mad at Kevin Adams for not finding a way to get that top 6 forward, especially when you're sitting on so much cap dollars right now. But I feel like he deserves a lot of credit for finding, trading for McLeod, signing Zucker, and he really has improved that fourth line. It's been significantly better this season. Bottom 6 has been better.
Well, I think if it was a normal off season, not one where you fire the coach and you're trying to, you buy out Jeff Skinner and you do all that stuff. I think it was just a normal off season. Those fourth line moves are ones where you're like, hey, that was an issue. That was an area of weakness. They were too slow last year. They just need to be better, more physical, do all that stuff. And like, they were great. Those are really good moves. Abe Kubel, like, still getting a feel for him yet. Like, he got hurt and
yeah.
Thing, so like, whatever. Lafferty, would like to see him be a little bit better, but Mallenstein, I think, has been very good. He's came as advertised. Like, he plays really hard, was really good on the PK last night, ate a shot against LA. Took a shot off his like the outside of his knee, went off, and then it looked awful. And you're like, oh boy, there goes another guy. And then he came right back. He was put a little spray freeze on it and get back out there, buddy. He was good to go. But like, those guys have been good. And I think Krebs centering those guys has been good as well, because I think maybe he's just adjusted well enough to know that, like, okay, this is where I'm good at. This is what I'm going to do. And being okay with that. Like, that's fine. But McLeod, has been awesome.
Yeah.
There's a good reason, like Tage Thompson goes out and that's bad. But there's a reason why he's the guy that gets tapped to be like, okay, here's you and Tuck. You guys work together because they play like a similar style. It's just that McLeod's so much faster. He's so much faster, and Alex is big and rangy, and he's got the good stick and the whole thing. And it's just what he does defensively, the way he just gets on top of the play, gets on top of guys, all over the ice, and he's just really good at that. And it's the kind of thing where I think if maybe like Sabres fan online presence was feeling better about the team and feeling like less like, well, the floor is going to fall out at some point, so I'm not going to get myself. I'm not getting attached yet. You gotta prove to me yet. But like, if they were dug in and like rabid and going off, the Edmonton Oilers mentions would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because McLeod has been so good and Edmonton's been and like the thing that they've lacked the most is a guy that plays exactly the way Ryan McLeod plays. And it's like, well, you gave him up because you guys wanted to be all offense all the time, which, you already were with two of the best players in the NHL, but it's a presence they really miss. And it's the Sabres taking advantage of them. Like it's worked out really good. And Jeff Skinner hasn't worked out good in Edmonton either, signing there. So like it was a ballsy move. I'll say this. That was a ballsy and a half trade by Adams because you're giving away a guy he drafted, not this isn't a guy that Jason Botterill drafted 9th overall. Like he drafted Matt Savoy 9th, and he gave him up for Ryan McLeod, a third line center, like just a toolsy player that can fill a need that they had at the time. And that's a good reason to get kind of the scorched earth treatment, to be like, what are you doing? Like, what's happening? This guy just had a monster year junior. Like, what are you doing? You guys stink. You can't be giving away guys like that. Sometimes the team that has the guy knows a little more about like what's going on. And like, they saw that road for Savoy being a lot longer and having a lot more issues for what Buffalo needs anyways. Edmonton could plug them in anywhere in their lineup if they wanted to and be like, here, you play with Connor, just go. Like, just do what you got to do. But the Sabres were in a position where it's like, we can't wait around for him to be acclimated to the NHL, to be, because he would have to play a year in Rochester, maybe another year after that to be ready for the NHL. And they're like, we can't sit around waiting for all of these guys to get up here. We have needs now. We have to make the playoffs now, because you can't not make the playoffs again, because if you don't, oh my God, like just your fans are already like half tuned out to start the season. So you can't just like do nothing. But that's where not going and getting a top 6 forward hurts, because you bought out a top 6 forward and didn't really replace him. Zucker has been a great signing, but I don't think anybody really said like, oh, there's our second line winger. There's our first line winger. Like, nobody was saying that. He could be the second line winger, but he's probably your third line winger. And he's been very good. He's been extremely good, great on the power play. No arguments there. But man, all it took was like a couple of injuries here and there, slow starts from Cousins and Quinn to be like, they're really thin. They need something. And that's why we're seeing Elliot Friedman and Darren Drager talking about how Kevin Adams is really working the phones trying to find a guy, and should have done it in the summer. That's all. Like, that's the thing that we yelled about from the start of free agency. And even at the draft was like, go get a second line, go get a top 6 forward. You need it. And it was just kind of like, I don't know. Maybe it'll work. No, it hasn't. It's not helped. And Cousins, like I said, Cousins and Quinn getting out slowly has not helped that either. But Greenway's gotten hurt. Tage goes out, and then you're like, oh boy. Just writing the lines, posting the lines on Blue Sky or Twitter, wherever, people are just like, Jesus, this team, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me with this team? Like, what are we doing here?
I have to confess something to you.
You said that?
No, well, before the game on Wednesday, I was on Blue Sky, and I saw Lance put out a tweet with the lines. And Tuck didn't practice, I think, for the pregame or whatever, or he didn't take the pregame skate or something. And it didn't have Tuck in there either.
Yeah.
And I quote tweeted it, and I said, yep, this has got a 4-1 loss written all over it. My confession is, after the game, I deleted that tweet. I deleted the tweet. But
I mean, listen, given the way that was set up, it was an understandable reaction, because you're talking about taking out another top scorer and putting a guy they just called up from Rochester into that spot. And now, granted, he was only skating in his place. I think they were very well aware that Tuck was going to play. The only question was whether Thompson was going to play or not. And when we talked to Tage before they left for California on Monday, it seemed like, yeah, I don't think he's going to play Wednesday. This doesn't sound good.
It had the lineup of a team that would have 75 points for the season. That's what their lineup looked like before the game, pregame, during the morning skate line rushes anyway. To me, last thing here, the Sabres, I kind of feel like are a tale of two teams right now, and I'll use two players specifically here. They're 991, so they're basically a 500 team.
Mm-hmm.
The good, it's been Tage Thompson. The magic seems to be back, and he's got 11 goals in 16 games. He's fighting through an injury, of course, right now. Fortunately, it did not hurt them this first leg of this trip. They win 1-0. But anyway, Tage, it feels like the magic is back with him. Last year, it kind of felt lost. He looks like Tage Thompson from 2 years ago. That's awesome. Conversely, Jack Quinn has 1 goal in 18 games. And God, I can't remember what game it was, but it was definitely a loss. And it was definitely a game that pissed me off because I ranted about it on the show the next day. He fell down 3 times. I was like, this guy's falling over himself. And it wasn't haha. No, Jack Quinn is quite literally falling over himself on the ice. What's up with Jack Quinn? This guy is, look, man, he's not Mike Bossy, okay? But he's better than this. And forget just the fact that he only has 1 goal on the season. I mean, that in itself is telling. It just doesn't feel like he's playing well, and you can't really do much about it because you're certainly not going to lose him on waivers, because you'd have to put him on waivers, if I'm not misunderstood here, for him to go down to Rochester. So I don't think he could just get sent down to Rochester. He's been in the press box already. Lindy has scratched him. What's going on with what's the issue right now? What's the problem from what you see with Jack Quinn? Because this does not look to me like the Jack Quinn that we've seen before, at least even just flashes of potential greatness. Not seeing it at all this season.
First off, he could go to Rochester without waivers. He's still on his entry level contract.
Could he really?
He could, but that would solve nothing, and that would create a crap storm of talk if you did it. But I don't. That to me is, I don't think that's the necessary thing right now. To me, I had this discussion with on Blue Sky with some fans who are understandably asking about him.
Mm-hmm.
I think this, and it's weird timing, because when he came back after he broke his leg, after he had come back from tearing his Achilles in, last 2 summers ago, what's the summer 23. Yeah. When he came back from that, he had 7 points in the last 10 games of the season, which was really good. He had, I think he had 4 goals, 3 assists or something like that. And it was oh, wow, this is pretty amazing, and coming back from a broken bone is easier than coming back from a torn Achilles. Let's be very serious here.
Sure.
You break a bone, you just got to wait for it to heal and then, get your strength back up and you're good to go. I looked at the way that he's played though. And he's looked slower. He's looked less sharp early on. And to me, that reeks of there being still leftover pain, damage, whatnot from having those 2 colossal injuries, and they each happen in the same leg. So that's a big deal. That's a very big deal, and that's a lot to work back from, especially a torn Achilles. That takes guys a long time to get past. Now, he came back in 6 months, I think it was, from that, and that's incredible. That's an incredibly quick amount of time to come back from tearing your Achilles to getting back in the ice and skating and doing all that. But you're still not 100% right. And that to me is like there's still like a lingering effect from that. And like, you break a bone in that same leg, like it's a lot of trauma. And he's really young. Like that's a lot to come over. But like to me now I'm seeing the skating's getting better. His pacing is getting a little bit better. And I think I know the game that you were talking about where he kept falling down. I think it was like the Montreal or St. Louis game, maybe. One of
There
those
was Montreal. I didn't watch the St.
Yeah.
Louis game. Montreal sounds right. I'm pretty sure it was Montreal.
Yeah. But like we were noticing it in the box too. We're like, geez, like, does he need new skate blades? Like, what's going on here? It just kept
Like me out there at
tripping
times.
himself up. Like it was just, you're just kind of like, all right, man, get it together. But I think at one point it stopped being a type of physical thing to being more mental. And when you're in your own head and you're stressing and you're like, like you got to score, like your line's having a hard time. And him and Cousins were both fighting it at the same time and they're playing on the same line together. And it's like, oh boy, like you're just like pop one and you'll be good to go. The confidence comes right back and you're fine. And that happened with Cousins. Like he scored a couple of goals and it's like, all right, old Dylan's back. We're good to go.
Yeah.
But I think in Quinn's case, like his one goal was an empty netter, I think. And it's like, well, that's good. That keeps the 0 out of the goal column. But like, it's not like beating a goalie and then being like, all right, yeah, we got him. Like that's, that really gets you focused and gets you back in play. But, this is where the injuries kind of came at a bad time. But when Zach Benson came back from his injury, because he was dealing with, I think Lindy said it was an ankle injury on GR.
Yeah.
Came back from that and those three were together. And I was like, oh, here we go. We're good to go because Benson was flying. Benson's been great since he's come back, mind you. He was flying. Cousins was feeding off of that. And so was Quinn. It was just a matter of time. And then, Tage gets hurt. Greenway gets hurt. Things are getting all jumbled around. And then it's like, all right, there's been no chemistry with that line. Before Benson came back, I think they went through like 5 different left wingers. Like within the span of a couple of weeks, just trying to find somebody to make it so those guys can snap out of it. But with Quinn, I look at it, it's just like, it's the cliche of squeezing the stick into sawdust. And I think at this point, he squeezed it down to like the molecular level of sawdust because it's just trying so hard to get one and get it going and like pop one on the power play, get one at some point. I think things turn around instantly for him. It's just a matter of getting that. And now that Cousins has his game back a lot more, I think he's looked very good the last few games too. So like that's a positive. Benson being back, when you get those 3 back together again, which I hope they will do, I think that works out really well. But it's just a matter of time. It's tough to watch just because we know how good he is. We know how much better he can be. It's just a matter of like, oh man, just get one and you'll be fine. And then he's going to be off and running. It's one where I feel bad because my hot prediction going into the year was Quinn's going to score 40. And unless he goes on an absolutely nuclear tear, I don't think that's going to happen.
No. We'll wrap up here. I'll say this. With Jack Quinn, it reminds me a little bit because I'm more of a football guy, but it reminds me of Trey White in a way. When Trey White got hurt, he's still young and he was on top of his game. And then he tore the ACL. And when he came back, it felt like he was healthy. Like he seemed to be moving around okay, but he wasn't the same that year. He didn't play well. Then he came back the next year and he was great for a month. Unfortunately, he suffered another, catastrophic injury. But it kind of reminds me of a little bit. Like Quinn physically is back, but he's not the same player right now that he was pre-major injury. I kind of feel like maybe is this too much of a reach here? If you could you need a top 6 guy right now. That we know that. If Jack Quinn could somehow get his game back to what it was 2 years ago when he played with Cousins and Paterka a couple years ago, if he plays at that level, I kind of feel like that's the top 6 forward you need because that first line is set. And if Cousins is playing better and Benson's coming on like you're talking about, Quinn is the weak link right now in that second line, that top 6 line. But if he could get back to what he was 2 seasons ago, then maybe you don't necessarily need that top 6 guy. I know a lot of people ain't going to want to hear that shit, but I kind of feel like, or is that too much of a reach, do you think?
I think it's a big risk. If that's what if you're counting on that to be
I say I'm counting on it.
Like, I mean, if you're counting on it, then like, boy, you got a lot of faith, man, and good on you.
I do not.
I'm proud of you for having the faith, like in that.
Nope.
Like this is where like the top 6 need for a move to like goes back to before last season. When Quinn, blew out his Achilles, and they didn't add anybody, and it was like, well, here's the guy you're counting on to be a big part of like your scoring, and like this guy's out until at least December. Who's filling that spot? And they didn't really do it. They didn't fill it with anybody.
True.
And just try to make it work and say like, oh well, we'll get through it and we'll be okay. Wrong, didn't work. So it's kind of like having like that, not solving that problem 2 years ago is kind of rolled its way into this season because
right.
You've had a couple of injuries and you've had some guys get off to slow starts, and then you just don't have the depth, you don't have the makeup, you don't have other guys in there to kind of make it work and make it play different. Now, the thing I'll say is that if they do somehow, some way pull off a trade to get a top 6 guy, I beg of them to make it a guy that has a different play style makeup than the guys that they've already got. Like, I don't need a high skill, super skilled dangler type. I need a guy who's going to drive the net. I need a guy who's going to be able to handle playing physically, and a guy who's just going to be a real pain in the ass. Like somebody who makes the other team mad by just hanging around the goal and being, playing, going, 100 miles an hour every shift and just kind of being upsetting to opposing teams. And, like that, I think it was, I know for Bleacher Report, I did a thing recently about, finding a guy for a trade. And one guy I picked out was Tyler Toffoli from San Jose. He's not that guy, but another guy that I had in mind was Michael Bunting in Pittsburgh, who's definitely that kind of guy. Like that guy is miserable to play against. Like, he plays physical. He can be a dirtbag sometimes. He dives to get calls sometimes. Like, he's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare guy to deal with. And like, Pittsburgh's bad. I know they're like technically in the playoff race, but they're bad. They're really bad. They're going to, I mean, I don't doubt Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, but like, boy, they're getting old, man. And like, they're going to have to make a move at some point. And Bunting is a guy that I look at with what he does, and I'm like, that is not something that exists on this roster right now. And like, he's scored 20 before. He did it in Toronto for a couple of years. So like, he can score a little bit. I don't know if necessarily he's like the top 6 guy. Like, he's not like Toffoli is the guy you think like, oh man, that guy's done it. He's won cups. Bunting's not quite that guy, but like, I don't know if you have him as like an element with some of the skill guys they do have, and have him on that line to just draw everybody else's attention by being a kind of a shithead. Fine by me. But that's the kind of element they're lacking with that. Benson kind of does that stuff, but like, he's 19. So like, he's still kind of figuring out his way around the league, and like, he can be a pain in the butt, but like, he's not doing a lot of that. He's not doing any of that stuff that like a guy like I'm describing does.
Sure. It's funny too. If you go get a top 6 guy, you got to give something back, and maybe Jack Quinn ends up being part of a deal, that goes back in a swing trade for a top 6 forward. And if Jack Quinn goes on to be great, that is what it is. I'm not holding my breath though for that to happen. We'll see. We'll see what happens with the Sabres. By the way, as we're going off the air here, earlier in the show, you said something about the Steelers and that you weren't sold on them, kind of like phony. I was like, I kind of disagree with you. However, right now, and we'll see, people might wake up and, Pittsburgh ends up winning this game, but they're down 10-3 at the half to the Browns. So if you lose this game, I might tend to agree with Joe a little bit more. Plus, it would be good for the Bills, for the Steelers, of course, to get their third loss. Even if you can't catch the Chiefs, if the Bills can be the 2 seed, you're guaranteed 2 home playoff games if you can win the first. So that does matter. But anyway,
Just watch, though. They'll end up winning that game like 15-13 or
probably
something. 5 field goals and just,
100%. They'll ugly it up and they'll find a way to win. It would not surprise me at all. People are like, what are you talking about? The Steelers won this game. Probably will end up being right. Anyway, make sure you follow Joe on, I got to use this, on Blue Sky at joeyerdon.bsky.social. Those long handles is like quite literally right now having to say them. That's the one thing I don't like. And if you're not already subscribed, go to notedhockey.com. Like I said, $5 a month, man. Chump change. Joe does a great job covering the Sabres day in, day out. If you want to pay for a whole year, save some bucks. It's $50 for the year, but either or, make sure you go check it out. Nice having you, buddy, man. Look, every week is that, it's out of the question now. We're too busy. I got too many things going on. Obviously, you do, especially during the season, but let's not make it another 4 months. You know what? Yeah. I just thought of it right now. December 15th, the Bills play the Lions on Sunday. I'm going to have you on that week. One of those 2 days, that Thursday or Friday before, it'll be a Bills preview with Joe Yerdon. We're going to do that. Bills Lions in a couple weeks. You in?
I'm in, although the night of that game, I'm going to be in Toronto that night. The Sabres are up there. So I'll get to miss out on the game, although I'll be with my buddy David Alter, who's the resident Lions fan in Toronto. So
we'll preview the game. I'll have you on like that Wednesday or Thursday or Friday the week of.
That works. That works because we're gonna have to go over. We're gonna have to talk about it because there's
100% game. All right, guys. Thank you very much again. Joe, for Joe Yerdon, I am Pat Moran. Enjoy the weekend. I'll be back. Joe from Queens will join me on the next show, which will be Monday.